Hi, I'm Alydia Rackham, and welcome to this week's novel writing tutorial. Okay, so today we're going to talk about plot and plot outlining and what you need to keep in mind when you are orchestrating your story from beginning, middle, to the end. Now, there is a school of thought where you have some characters, you have a setting, and you just sort of start writing, and you see where it will take you, and you just keep writing, and you just see what'll happen. You know what I'm going to say to that, don't you? It's the same thing that I've said before about going on a trip without making any preparations, without knowing where you're going, without having the money, without having any clothes. You don't want to do it. People who do this wind up with huge, lumbering manuscripts with tons and tons of stuff in them that doesn't need to be there. And an editor or the writer will have to look through it and just go, chop, 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 chop. And then it will finally be the size that it should have been. And look at all that wasted time. Why do that? Or you'll wind up like George R. Martin, who writes the Game of Thrones, which I don't read or watch, by the way. But because he just writes stuff and just has no clue where he's going, now I guess the TV show has caught up with where I don't know what they're going to do, because his last book isn't finished and he'll probably die before he finishes this stupid thing. And I guess even winter hasn't even come yet. This is all like a prologue. Why? So the way to avoid falling into the bog of plotlessness and having a manuscript that's this big is to properly outline. But the way to properly outline is to know what makes a plot. The first part of a plot is the introduction. This is where we get to know the main character and the setting, and we are sort of introduced to the problem. Maybe not the villain straight away, but the issue. The problem that the characters are going to be facing and fighting through the story, but we just are sort of learning that right at the very beginning. Next comes the rising action. This is the build up. Things should get more and more exciting with each chapter, building up to something. The interest, the intrigue, the mystery should get thicker. The character relationships should get more interesting, more strained, or closer, but nothing should totally clash yet. Less specifically, but no less important, is like the middle conflict, where the hero will encounter something of the villain's make and will either fail or not the thing that they wanted to happen will not necessarily happen, or they will find out something that changes the direction of where they think they need to go. You'll find this almost in every superhero movie. There is what you'd call the secondary battle, but it's actually it's the first thing that you come up on, the first big action sequence, but it's not the climax. Like in this new Wonder Woman movie, there's the fight in No Man's Land. That was a great big deal. And then after that, right on the tails of that was something, something got bombed and it changed her perspective on what she needed to be doing. So but that wasn't the climax. So all stories need to have something like that, but it's not very specific, but you need to have something like that that ramps up the stakes. And then you've got the climax, where the problem is at its peak, the hero is is there too, and the villain or whatever evil that they're encountering, and they are smashing into each other. And you should not be sure about who's going to win. In fact, it would be good if there was quite a bit of doubt whether or not the hero is going to live through this, because otherwise it's boring. So this is the heated point where the readers are sitting on the edge of their seat going So then, of course, after the big boom at the end, the climax, then there is what you call falling action, and that's not, you're not done yet, but you are pulling things together. Any sort of unanswered questions, anything like that, people's reactions to what just happened, their discussions about the conflict, all of those things that you're wondering about, everybody has to have a reaction. You need to give them time and space to react and recover. And then, of course, you have the conclusion, which can be relatively short, but it's just, what do we take away from this story? You don't want it to feel abrupt, or like a door slammed in your face, or like the season got canceled before it could resolve anything. We all know how that feels, right? We've been watching a TV show and we're like, yeah, this is great, and then, you know, there's the last bit, and then clearly all this stuff is not done, but there's no more. So don't make people mad like that. You really don't want to make them mad like that. You need to make sure that you've tied everything up, unless you're going to write a sequel, but we'll get to that later. But you still need to get to a sense of resolution, even if it is just the first story in a group. There needs to be a sense of resolution at the end, so that people will feel at least slightly satisfied, but still interested if you're going to keep going. Your plot will need a sense of urgency. The best way to do that is to put a time limit on something. You have to get this done, or found, or killed before this time, and that's everything. That's every story. Think of, okay, Star Wars. We have to destroy the Death Star before it blows up the Rebel base and pretty much everybody else who doesn't like the Empire. In Lord of the Rings, we have to destroy the ring before Sauron's army sweeps over all of Middle-earth and brings about a second darkness. In the Hunger Games, I just have to stay alive for this many days. And I have to make sure that I don't, kill anybody that I like, or just kind of try to stay out of the way while they kill each other. Please just let me stay alive until I win. If your story doesn't have a sense of urgency, a deadline, a timeline, something like that, it's going to be dull. Even things like romantic stories that are less death and doom have some kind of timeline on them. Like, well, I'm just now getting to like this guy, but he's gonna move away. There's limitations on things and timelines that you have to build into the story to make tension and to cause the characters to move forward. Otherwise, if they're too comfortable, they're just gonna sit in their armchair and smoke their pipe and never ever go to fight the dragon and get the treasure. Because the song that the dwarves sang was, "We must away ere break of day." So Bilbo didn't have I'll think about it for a month. No, he had, in the morning, he had to make his decision. Either I go now, or I sit here for the rest of my life, regretting that I didn't go on my great adventure. Okay, so knowing all of that, and you can make a little diagram if you want to. But here's how you outline. I know you learned in school some stupid way of outlining where you have this title and then this subtitle thing and then bullet point. Ugh, who does that? That's for a PowerPoint presentation or something. I don't know. Don't do that because it's dumb. That's not how creative minds work. What I do is, usually when a story comes to me, I have a few very specific scenes and things that I would like to see happen. So I just sit down with a notebook and I literally write at the top. I'm just going to use my thing that I just outlined recently. Alydia Rackham's Ragnarok. Events in no particular order. So I just write down things that I would like to see, that I'm planning on using, and I wind up with a pretty long list, right? And then I look through it and I go, okay, well, this can't happen before this happens. So, and then this has to happen right after that. So I write numbers next to each one of those things. And then on another piece of paper, I write them out in their proper order. And then I look at it and I go, okay, now there's things missing in between that needs to happen in order for this to lead to that, to lead to that. And those will spell themselves out pretty clearly. If this person is here, and then they're here, well, I need to have a little section where they got there and why, and who they're with. So it almost writes itself. Be pretty detailed, like write out a paragraph of what you want to be happening in that particular chapter. And a good chapter length is 10 computer pages long. And as you practice, you will learn how much content will make up 10 pages. Okay? Don't try to put too much in a chapter because you'll die. Don't try to put too little because then that's, I don't know who does that. Who does that? James Patterson? Somebody writes like 2-page chapters. That's stupid. Don't do that. Just because then you wind up with, like 70 chapters. You don't need that. A nice novel length story is between 21 and 30 chapters long. Okay, each about 10 computer pages long. So aim for that. Once you've figured out all of your events in correct order, then open up a Word document and type all that out and divide them into their proper chapters. Each thing is, each happening is in the proper chapter, and that will remain at the bottom of your novel. And then, so when you go up there and you type chapter 1 and then you start and you type out chapter 1, what I do is I go down to the bottom then and I highlight the contents in my outline of chapter 1 and I make it italics or I change the color or something so that I know where I am in my outline. I can clearly see that. And I have deviated in the past from my outline because of things that have developed throughout the story or because later I got a better idea. But I almost never completely swerve off the track and completely go do something else that I hadn't planned on at the last minute. If I'm going to change my outline, I can feel that pretty early on in the story, and then I change the outline, and then I stick to it. You can't be changing it constantly because, again, you'll get lost and you'll leave these funny little rabbit trails and plot holes that won't resolve themselves. So it is much better to streamline that plot when it's in the outline phase. Sit on that outline for a few days. Ruminate on it. Don't get in a big hurry. Think of all the cool nuances you could use and all the scenes you would like to explore. Don't be in a hurry, but get that thing right before you ever start writing. Okay, so it is, let me get my paper. The plot construction is introduction, rising action, then that middle conflict, then the climax, then the falling action, and then the conclusion. And to outline, you write out your events, you put them in the right order, and you streamline that baby before you ever start writing the novel. And you keep it at the bottom of your document so that you always have it there. You're not going to lose it in the car or on the airplane or whatever. It's always there with your novel. Of course, you'll delete it later, but you always have it right there. For homework, take one of your most beloved stories or movies and apply what happens in that story to the plot arc diagram. See if you can pick out those pieces. And if you want, do it with more than one story. Do it with several of different genres that you can see. Like pick out Indiana Jones over here and then like Emma over here, and then see if you can do it, because you can. And also in each one, write down what is causing the sense of urgency. What is the deadline that's driving the hero to action? Okay, thanks for watching, and I will see you next week.